Glory and Evening Grace, America. Hugh Hewitt back in studio, out of my sick bed because I didn't want to miss this interview. I'm so pleased to welcome FCC Chairman Brendan Carr to the program. I do that with a couple of mental reservations, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. Good to have you here.
Yeah, good to be with you. Thanks so much for having me on. Been a huge fan of your show over the years. It's really wonderful to be with you.
Well, my mental reservation is that you're an Ajit Pai protege, and he's a Kansas City Chiefs guy. And I always thought he put his thumb on the scale for the Chiefs against the Browns. Will you commit to net neutrality vis-a-vis the Browns so that we're on the air more?
Exactly. Fair and equal treatment for everybody. I'm fully committed to it. I'm with you.
All right. Let's get to the important story. And when they said you were available, I did come in. I wasn't going to come in today. But I think your Council for National Security within the agency is maybe the most important thing the FCC has done since it actually got stood up. So would you explain to people, and we got Steelers fans listening, so let's go slow. Let's explain to them what the FCC does and what the Council for National Security is intended to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that the FCC does, but one of the most important, as you indicated, is that Congress established us to help promote national security. And this is something that actually in the first Trump administration, President Trump, once again saw around the corner, in particular with respect to China and the CCP. And he took sort of early definitive action on Huawei and ZTE, effectively spy gear that we had allowed to infiltrate our networks. And right now, China is taking efforts across hundreds and hundreds of technology sectors. We took good action on Huawei. That's great. We moved on ZTE, China Mobile, China Telecom. But we have to be extremely vigilant against all the threats. And so we've borrowed a lot of this gear from our networks, but we're finding that the CCP is sort of white labeling their devices. They're standing up shell companies. And so what we've done now is we've stood up a new council within the FCC that's going to reach across all of our bureaus. So Public Safety, Wireline, Wireless, Media Bureau, and we're going to make sure that we're working together to protect our national security.
Now, I am mostly concerned. I'm concerned with it all. Keith Kroc is a friend of mine, and when they set up the Clean Technology Initiative and Trump won at state, I was very happy. I'm not sure what happened during the regency of Joe Biden, or whoever was running the place, I don't know. But we got an actual ownership issue, which goes to something Senator Cotton wrote in his new book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China. Most of our news networks, with the exception of the Fox News Channel, are owned by Hollywood companies that are heavily dependent upon revenue from China. Will the Council for National Security be looking into the influence issues, if not outright ownership issues through shell corporations and third-party shareholders of these production companies that own our news channels?
Yeah, 100%. And look, there's been concerns raised in particular, including by Senator Cotton, in one transaction in particular that's now before the FCC, CBS. There's been some concern raised about potential CCP or Chinese money there. We take that seriously. We're going to take a look at it. But in general, we're going to look at all these issues. So as a threshold matter, if in fact you're a foreign government, you can't have a broadcast license in the FCC. But there are entities that are tied to these foreign governments that are making investments. And historically, the FCC has been pretty permissive there. I can assure you that we are not going to be as permissive this go round. We're going to look at the national security issues. And in fact, one transaction in particular, when George Soros went out and bought 200 plus radio stations and got a special shortcut from the FCC to do it right before the election, one thing they skipped was the national security review of the foreign financial assets that were being used to make that purchase. So soup to nuts, we're going to require a lot more disclosure of ties to foreign entities. In fact, we've taken some steps there already, and we're going to take a close look at this foreign funding within our broadcast media.
In regards to that disclosure, I'm syndicated by a bunch of people, but Salem is my principal syndicator. They were outbid by the Soros bid. That's not why I brought you on. I just want to disclose that so people understand that, yeah, I hated that thing. I think there's dark money involved in that. I don't know where that money's coming from, and I don't know what their plan is, but they're buying up all sorts of AM radio stations, and it's not for the good of the Republic, in my humble opinion. I don't think they're CCP spies, but I would not. I mean, the CCP is very good at this stuff. I've been doing this for more than 10 years, and actually going back to DOJ in 1984, the bad guys are very good at manipulating the open society to attack us by ownership. And I mean, do you have skilled people? Do you have folks who actually know how to go look for them?
Yeah, at the bare minimum, to your point, we have to have transparency. And we've actually been working actually, including during the Biden years, we put new disclosure obligations in place. So if broadcasters are running sponsored programming, they need to be much more transparent about the source of foreign funding that goes into that. And so this is going to be an important vertical for us, both the ownership side and otherwise making sure there's much more transparency and disclosures when it comes to these issues.
Now, the way I see this is the Council for National Security only includes FCC employees, so you don't have any Federal Advisory Committee Act or OPM issues there. You're just using existing people. Am I right about that, Mr. Chairman?
That's right. Yeah, we're operating here, obviously, in light of President Trump's direction that every single agency deliver great results, but do so efficiently. So this is bringing together existing components of the agency that are already in the building. Now, we will interact with our counterparts across government, including the NSC itself over within the White House, including Team Telecom at DOJ. But this is gathering internal FCC resources. And, as a separate matter, we are sort of moving much more efficiently here and getting rid of excessive contracts, and we're working on our own internal DOJ team. The actual DOJ team will be coming to the FCC in the near future as well, and so we welcome the chance to be sort of efficient in how we deliver results.
Now, you're a great Catholic university lawyer, so you know we have to be viewpoint neutral and content neutral when it comes to the exploration of what the national security product is from our news and networks and broadcast facilities. But are you afraid to look? Because for many, many years after the McCarthy era, America was afraid to look at content and whether or not they were covering stuff. But we've seen China just lay the heavy hand on the NBA, on Universal, on all sorts of movie production studios. I'm sure they're doing what they can to lay the heavy hand on. Are we afraid to look, or do you have courageous people at the commission that will go and look for that sort of untoward influence?
Yeah, I think sunlight is the best disinfectant, and so we're going to take a hard look at that. The person that I brought in to specifically run the FCC Security Council used to work on the China Select Committee, so he's really steeped in these issues, understands the complexity and what we need to get done. But as a general matter, if you look at the FCC, every single broadcaster out there, whether they're radio or TV, they have a special right. They have this ability to use a scarce national resource, the airwaves. It's limited. Not everybody gets to do it. You get a license from us to do it. But the bargain there is you're supposed to operate in the public interest. And for decades, the FCC, frankly, on a bipartisan basis, walked away from any sense of enforcing the public interest standard. And that's one thing that we're reinvigorating at the FCC and making sure that local broadcasters know they have to serve their community. Because if you step back, think about it this way. The trust in media right now is at an all-time low, but that's really about the national news media, whether it's ABC, NBC, CBS. People actually like their local TV broadcast station, their local radio station. And so one of the biggest things I'm doing as a policy matter is I'm having the backs of local broadcasters when they are pushing back on some of that, Hollywood and New York programming that's being shoved down their throats. But I'm also making sure those local broadcasters know that they have the public interest obligation. We're going to be watching at the FCC to make sure they do the right thing.
Now, Mr. Chairman, we have 250,000 Chinese nationals in the United States on student visas. We have more on LPRs, green cards. Do you think there ought to be any kind of review of such people before they work for media and technology companies? Because the intellectual property heft, as well as the espionage, is overwhelming. It's much larger than it was in the Soviet era. Much, much larger.
Yeah, of course. We have that in all sorts of other portions of our industry. I was actually at Columbia University last year when some of these pro-Palestine protests were taking place, and I was helping people understand, look, there's a distinction between your free speech rights and your conduct that you engage in, including occupying some of the classrooms that folks there were engaged in. But when we have sensitive fields that people are going to, of course we need to have responsible vetting before we let people in.
All right. Let me move to part two of the new council, which is to upgrade our ability to detect vulnerabilities to surveillance, espionage, and cyber attacks. Amen. I teach law students. I make them take TikTok off their phone. I told them you cannot get DeepSeek. We're just not going to have spies in the classroom. You shouldn't have spies in your house. What else can the FCC do to let people know about this? You got a minute. We got to go to a break.
Yeah, look, we got to get going on this. I mean, Salt Typhoon was one of the most massive cyber intrusions we've ever had. When I went into the SCIF, the secure facility, and got a briefing on this, I came out, I just felt like smashing my phone on the ground. It just felt like the depth of penetration that the CCP has achieved here is something that never should have happened. And so that's something that we need to take a look at, working with carriers, patching these backdoors, these other problems that we've identified. That's going to be a big lift for the council, but we're going to do it.
Okay, I'm going to come right back with Chairman Carr. He is the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and he has stood up in one of the most important initiatives of the new Trump administration, the Council for National Security within the FCC. Bravo to him. If you want to know why, just go get Cotton's book, 7 Things You Can't Say About China. There's an entire chapter. But there's one part that I haven't gotten to yet. Then we're going to talk about staying ahead in technology, and it's up to the FCC to help. Still with Chairman Carr of the FCC. Chairman Brendan Carr has taken over as the chairman of the FCC, and he's moving fast. Many, many initiatives. I could talk to him all day about these initiatives. The Religious Freedom Expression Initiative is important to me, but I'm focused like a laser on China and the threat they pose to our telecommunications industry. Mr. Chairman, I am a dummy on the debate between the Department of Defense and the FCC over the spectrum GHz range 1 to 6. All right, so I don't know anything, and I don't pretend to know anything, and I have no opinion on it. All I want to know is that we're staying ahead of the Chi-Coms when it comes to the critical technologies, 5G, 6G, artificial intelligence, satellite space, quantum robotics, autonomous systems, and the Internet of Things. How does the FCC help do that without screwing up the marketplace, but also keeping China out? It's a really difficult mission.
Yeah, look, and thankfully, the real leader in this space right now is Chairman Ted Cruz. He's on Senate Commerce Committee. He's leading the way to make sure that America has the spectrum resources, as you indicated, to not just compete with China, but make sure that investment flows here, that we bridge the digital divide. Here's the reality. During the first Trump administration, we fell behind China on the availability of spectrum. This is when 5G was just coming online. And if we had allowed that to happen, they would have just dominated the technology sector. But President Trump stepped in, turned things around. We freed up more spectrum, more of these airwaves for 5G than any other country. And, we flipped the script. Now, flash forward to 4 years under President Biden, and the country just fell into a deep malaise when it came to one of those important, vectors of our economic strength and national security, which is spectrum. China has just outpaced us the last 5 years when it comes to freeing up the airwaves. That means they control the standard setting bodies. That means the investment's going to flow to them. That means the spectrum that they want to use will be free.
Can we stop for a second, Mr. Chairman? Again, let's think about the Steelers fans. You say spectrum and they think about a crystal with a light going through it. What do you mean by saying they control the spectrum?
Yeah, so take your smartphone, for instance. If you want all the data you need to stream videos, to do AR, VR, to do AI, if you want Chat GPT to work on your phone, you need a lot of capacity going to your phone. And spectrum airwaves is effectively like the fiber or the cable to your house, but it's invisible, and it's how you get your phone to download all those videos much more quickly. And we have fallen behind China with respect to the amount of that spectrum that can be used for wireless services right to your phone. And so the innovations that take place, the technologies that can be developed, they're going to go to the countries that have freed up the amount of spectrum airwaves needed to power those wireless innovations. So we got sort of walked down a cul-de-sac by President Biden where China jumped out to hundreds of megahertz of spectrum lead on us. And we got to turn that around. And that's what Chairman Cruz is working really hard on.
Well, tell me how that would work. If we made more spectrum available to the private sector, could we keep China out of it while licensing it to American companies to use to innovate in the area of communications, quantum, and AI?
Yeah, I mean, just to throw out a number. So, for instance, let's say we have 200 megahertz. It's a unit of measurement of spectrum. China right now has 1,200 megahertz of spectrum available, and so AI is going to develop there faster. It's also going to have cheaper, prices for cell phone service. When we have more spectrum, you can get high-speed internet right to your home without needing to get a cable or a fiber. You can get it over the air from a cell phone provider. So it makes a very big difference in terms of prices and competition. But again, national security, if we're sort of in this posture where China's leading on 6G and AI, then we're going to be in a really difficult position. You noted sort of DoD. DoD has their own spectrum needs, right? They have radar systems and sensitive systems. So we got to make sure that they have the access to the spectrum they need to do their job. But there still is a lot more spectrum we can free up to use for smartphones or in-home broadband. And that's going to be vital to our economy.
Last question, Mr. Chairman. This is kind of into the weeds, but it matters a great deal. A lot of people of my generation, I knew Dick Wiley when he set up your old law firm, Wiley Ryan. Fred Fielding was my boss at the White House in the bad old days. The lawyers of then do not have the abilities that are necessary today to deal with the technologies of tomorrow. do you have the hiring ability and the capacity to bring into the FCC the modern tech lawyers who are coming out of places that specialize in this, whose national security credentials cannot be questioned, to supplement the standing staff at the FCC to get us ready for the 22nd century?
Yeah, we're in a great position right now. Like I said, I hired in people to report directly to me, the first ever direct report that's a national security advisor. We have experts on Spectrum. We got a great group coming in. And frankly, we're just following President Trump's lead. You know, most people come to D.C., they hope to turn the ship of government 1 degree here, 2 degrees there. But President Trump has fundamentally flipped the script, and he's moving aggressively.
Oh, I guess the FCC got mad at it. And not there. You're back. He's moving aggressively. I thought maybe the chat comms got to us.
Exactly. We're moving aggressively with a ton of speed right now, and we're going to get it done. And it's, really thanks to President Trump's leadership.
Chairman Carr, please keep coming back. You've got a great, by the way, communications team. Whoever you put in charge of that, they're doing a great job. I look forward to many conversations with you, and congratulations on the council. This is a big deal. Next time we'll talk religious expression and religious freedom. I appreciate your time today.
Look forward to it. Thanks to you. Appreciate it.
Now it's time for me to take my relief factor, which I am going to do because I think I'm going to be well enough tomorrow to get down to the beach if it's not raining. And so I'm taking my relief factor, as I do every day. I just collapsed on Wednesday. I actually left class. I haven't left class on mid-course since I started teaching in 1995. And I don't think I've taken a sick day from the radio forever, but Dwayne gave me this plague. I was blaming it on my grandkids, but I decided to blame Dwayne. And the pink stuff kicked in finally last night. And then they said Chairman Carr was available. I said, I'll be there. I'm going to be on special report tonight, too. So stick around for that. But I got to get out tomorrow if I can feel good enough. I haven't had any exercise for 2.5 weeks. The relief factor has been a constant, but no exercise. And I got to get out there and get some miles in. And that's because relief factor works. I will not feel the minor aches and pains that come from a 20-day layoff. I'd recommend it to you at 1-800-4 and the word relief, the only supplement I've taken for 20 years, the only one I'm going to take. And people offer me a lot of money to take their supplements, but I don't want them. I don't need them. Sometimes I need the pink stuff and prednisone, but I don't need anything other than relief factor. Call 1-800-4-RELIEF, get their starter pack, or get it at the website, $19.95 for 3 weeks. That's $1 a day, less than $1 a day, at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. I also want to thank Dwayne for sitting in yesterday on short notice when I broke the glass and said, can't do it, had no voice at all. And he did a horrible job, though, raising money for Food for the Poor. Just another horrible job. So I just want to ask all of you people out there, it's Lent, it's Friday. You're not allowed to eat meat anyway if you're a Catholic. So why don't you just skip dinner and send the $100, and that's what it costs to go out for dinner, even if you're going to like have cheese pizza somewhere. Skip that and send it to Food for the Poor. There's a banner over at HughHewitt.com. That will feed a child in El Salvador for 1 year through the Food for the Poor school lunch program. Feed Their Future is the banner at HughHewitt.com. Listen to Kurt Schlichter talk about this, our friend Kurt last week.
Salvadoran children under 5 years of age face hunger and anemia at a rate of 25%. The only opportunity they have for a healthy life is through lunches they get at school. That's where you and I come in. And there's no USAID, federal bureaucracy, none of that nonsense. This is a 100% voluntary opportunity for you to be the hands and feet of Jesus, helping the poorest of the poor in our own hemisphere.
I love when Colonel Kurt surprises you like that. Be the hands and feet of Jesus. 855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. You can text my name, Hewitt, H-E-W-I-T, to 51555. But the best is to go to HughHewitt.com and click on the Feed Their Future. $100 for a child for a year. That means 10 kids for $1,000 you Steelers fans get in the game. I have mixed feelings about my next guest. Rob Bluey is the editor-in-chief of the Daily Signal, and I've known him since before he was shaving. So now that he's middle-aged, what's that make me? I don't know. Bluey, welcome. It's great to have you on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me today.
Well, I want to catch people up on your career. You came to D.C., in 2005, 6, something like that, and then you went to Heritage in 2007. I used to broadcast from Heritage when I didn't have a studio in D.C., and you would always meet me. So have you been at Heritage since 2007?
I have. I actually came to D.C. in '01. I spent a few years reporting on Capitol Hill and doing other political coverage for CNS News when it existed at the Media Research Center, and then Human Events. And it was when we started the bloggers briefing, when bloggers were all the rage in the mid 2000s, that I found my place at Heritage. And then, about 7 years after that, we started the Daily Signal in 2014, and I've been focused on that largely ever since.
You invited me to the first bloggers lunch. I don't know if you remember that. I think the Powerline guys were there and a few other. And then you never invited me back. I don't know what I did. Did I spill soup or something? Did I have bad manners? I got one invite to the bloggers lunch and I was out.
I'm sorry. Well, that was an error on my part. You were not deliberately excluded by any means, but the bloggers were the social media influencers before before they existed. And I think back, if only I had known that growing my following to 1 million on Instagram or Twitter would get me all of the riches, then I would have spent a lot more time doing that.
Well, I think people should follow Rob on X at Rob Bluey. They ought to follow the Daily Signal. They ought to visit it. Heritage has really embraced the new media. Rob, my construct is there's legacy media, there's old new media, which is talk radio and Fox News Channel, and the bloggers were a part of old new media, and now there's new media, which is a million different things, including podcasting. Have you taken a nosedive into podcasting yet?
We are. I mean, at the Daily Signal, we've always felt, we're very blessed that Heritage has given us this opportunity and the resources to have a nonprofit news organization. And so as part of that, Hugh, we are mission driven. We don't hide the fact that we are conservative, and we're also platform agnostic. So whether you're consuming information on a social media platform, through a podcast, on a video, or reading or doing the old-fashioned thing of reading and subscribing to an email newsletter, we offer it all, and that's really our goal. Is we want to make sure that we have a better educated, more informed public about the policy debates that are happening in Congress, the White House, and all across the state capitals in this country.
Rob, I've seen some clips of you showing up on CNN and a few other places, and I've always said there are two kinds of Republicans and conservatives who show up on legacy media: refugees and missionaries. And I was a missionary forever, but I'm done with that. I'm too old for that nonsense now. Now you're one of the missionaries. How do you like it? When I see you on CNN and around surrounded by these left-wing lunatics, I think, oh, good, you're the right age for that nonsense. What do you think of it?
Well, you're absolutely right. You're outnumbered because very few people, hold those conservative values or beliefs. I think a conversation we were having this morning on CNN is a testament to this. They were talking about the Snow White movie, which Disney has produced and will be in theaters next Friday. And they were. I made the point that it was an example of DEI, Disney doing DEI again, and the panel just looked at me confused. and I think that this is so important for their audiences to understand that there's half of the country that sees how these major corporations or others, are embracing these woke ideologies, and they generally don't think about it in the same terms that we do as conservatives. So, yes, I guess I would consider myself a missionary, and I'm trying to at least bring a different perspective to these discussions that they might not otherwise hear.
Well, get your Kevlar if you go over to MSNBC. CNN remains somewhat respectful of center-right to conservative views, but I don't know about CNN. Rob, on Fridays, I like to go through news of the week. So I want to start with Khalil, Mohammed Khalil. I haven't got a ruling yet today. He should be out of the country already under 8 U.S.C. 1227. There isn't a right of repeal. It's a non-justiciable call by the Secretary of State. What do you think is going to happen there?
I do think ultimately he will be deported and removed. I think that the Trump administration is standing on some fairly solid ground. And by the way, Hugh, I'm basing my opinion on the legal experts at the Heritage Foundation and others whose analysis of the situation I trust deeply. And the reason why I do is because you have a situation here where the United States has broad leverage to remove individuals like this who are clearly supporting terrorism and working against the United States. And so I have no idea how a judge might rule. Remember, we have seen all sorts of rulings early on these days of the Trump administration that clearly the president probably does not like. And so I don't know if this is one of those cases that'll make it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Earlier today, Rob, I posted a long excerpt over at X from Justice Jackson's opinion in the 1952 case of Horace Ladies versus Shaughnessy, where a couple of communists got thrown out of the country. They were LPRs, green card holders, but you couldn't be a communist. And so everyone's saying this is the McCarthy era. That's just so stupid. It's not. It's a power inherent in the federal government to expel aliens who are dangerous to our foreign policy. Is that the conclusion of the heritage experts?
Yeah, that's similar to what I've read from those who work in the Mies Center, the legal center at the Heritage Foundation. I mean, I think there's a couple issues here. One is just a common sense issue. I think most people would look at this situation and they'd say, why would we want an individual who's engaging in these types of tactics and rhetoric? And if there is a means for deporting them, let's do it. And then there's the legal question, which you're raising. And I do think, based on the analysis you shared and what I've read elsewhere, that there's a good chance that a judge rules in favor of the Trump administration's move here. And remember, Donald Trump has said that he's not going to end here with this particular individual. This will continue. And so I think that it's important to have clarity.
And I want people to realize that the Justice Jackson opinion, his clerk was a guy named Rehnquist, and Rehnquist's clerk was a guy named Roberts. And if a question of national security and deportation gets up to the Supreme Court, the Roberts, Rehnquist, Jackson trio kicks back in. And I'm pretty confident about this. The executive cannot be obliged to be second guessed in a matter of national security by a judge, no matter how much they think of themselves. Let me ask you, Rob, why are Democrats throwing in with Khalil to begin with? This is not really the demo you want if you're going to try and rebuild your party.
It's not. I mean, I've heard some try to make the case about free speech. I think it's very interesting that they've used that particular line of argument. But you're absolutely right, Hugh. This seems like one of those issues where people are getting very worked up over somebody who is engaging in the type of rhetoric that doesn't really necessarily have a place in this country. And you might have differences of opinion about the Palestinian Israel situation, but to have somebody who's openly embraced some of the tactics with Hamas, which is a designated terrorist group of the United States, is a totally different question.
Right. I want to underscore, I have no idea why Secretary Rubio made the determination that Mr. Khalil is a threat to our foreign policy. Nobody does. The key to the law is the Secretary of State doesn't have to say so, and it's unreviewable. Now, Mr. Khalil has due process rights. We got to make sure that we've detained the right person and that he's an LPR, not an American citizen, because American citizens have better and more perfect rights. But I do not know why Democrats have decided this is the hill they want to stand on. Stand by. I'm coming back with Rob Bluey. We're going to talk about shutdown idiocy and whether or not the Schumer shutdown is going to happen, and Vladimir Putin and Ukraine, and lots more. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with Rob Bluey. I'm really kind of happy that Rob Bluey is joining me. Every Friday, I try and bring in people like Rob or Ben Domenech or Charlie Cook or really smart conservatives like Matt Continetti and the rest of these other three guys to review the news in the week. And Rob is going to add to our rotation there, and I'm so appreciative of that. Rob, we don't have a final vote on the CR yet as we're talking. This will also go on the podcast tomorrow, but we're broadcasting right now live across the country. So it looks like the Democrats are going to cave and go for the CR. Is that your understanding, so that the government remains open?
I think ultimately that's what they will do. I mean, obviously, Chuck Schumer coming out and declaring his support, I think, sends a signal to at least 8 to 10 other Democrats that they should come along. And I think you probably look at those 3 Democrats who have said that they're going to retire. Obviously, there's not a lot, at stake for them in the next election, or nothing at stake for them. And then a few others who come from some swing states who don't necessarily want this hanging over their head. But there will be a significant faction of the Democratic Party, just as there were all but one in the U.S. House, who will vote to basically not fund the government and move forward for a shutdown. They need the 60 votes. We know that Rand Paul is not going to vote with Republicans on this one. He is a no. And so that gets them to 8 that they need among the Democrats.
Now, this is the Biden Regency budget. I no longer call it the Biden presidency, because we now know we actually have no idea who is running the government. It was a Regency. So during the Biden Regency, they came up with this budget and they passed it for 6 months. And it's a continuation of that budget with some reprioritization. I would vote for it in order to give us time to get to one big, beautiful bill. Has Heritage taken a position on the CR?
Yes, Kevin Roberts and at Heritage Action and Heritage Action Executive Vice President Ryan Walker have both come out and endorsed the continuing resolution. And this is, consistent with, I think, what you've seen from the Freedom Caucus and other conservatives. Nobody really likes a continuing resolution, as I think you're hinting at here, particularly one that was crafted during the Biden era. But there are more important things that we need to get focused on, including budget reconciliation.
Now let's get focused on budget reconciliation. I am an agnostic on one big beautiful bill or two big beautiful bills or three big beautiful bills, but the House has passed one big beautiful bill that extends the tax cuts for 5 years. That seems to me to be the minimum necessary to get liftoff on the economy. What do you think about it, Rob? Should we just go with the House bill, stamp it, move it, and come back for round two?
I think so, absolutely. Remember, one of the key factors here is what the Senate parliamentarian is going to allow in the budget reconciliation bill. So there's one line of thinking is that you take the House bill, but you actually start it in the Senate, so you have the framework. You don't have a situation where the House passes something. Remember, this a narrow margin in the House. It goes over to the Senate, and the parliamentarian rules that certain aspects of the bill can't be passed under reconciliation. And so whatever you need to do, I think you need to get this done in the first half of the year. You have to get it done in the second quarter. Otherwise, you're not going to realize all of the benefits from those tax cuts and the extensions that you're talking about, Hugh. And this was the problem in 2017. They waited until December to get it done, and then it took a long time for us to really see the effect of it in the market. And the American people are hurting right now. They want to see action. They want to see costs lower. We had an encouraging inflation report this week, but they need to see more.
Now, there's an attempt by legacy media and Democrats to paint the market up and down, and it's been mostly down for the first 2 months, as a verdict on the Trump presidency. That's idiocy, of course. It's idiocy to say anything is a verdict on anything. But we have a lot of TDS out there, some of which people have never overcome in legacy media. Then we have a lot of TDS relapse among center-right conservatives who got over their TDS, realized that Trump's second term would be much, much better than the Biden regency or a Kamala Harris presidency, but they're relapsing, Rob. It's like they can't wait 6 months to see what happens. They want to declare that Trump has failed. Have you noticed this?
They absolutely do. I mean, I think that there is a segment that will always think that way. I don't know if there's anything that he could possibly do. I mean, he could achieve peace in the Middle East and Europe and have a roaring economy, and they would still point the finger at Trump and want to blame him for things. So there is just this genuine hatred for him, sadly, that exists with some people. But, there's new polling out today from Scott Rasmussen at the Neapolitan News Service that has his approval rating up to 54%. That's the highest in Scott's poll since inauguration day. So I think that there's still a large segment of the American people who like what Trump is doing. They think that somebody's finally gone to Washington to clean up some of the mess. You and I were engaged in some of these fights over earmarks and spending, going back almost 20 years. And finally, you have a president.
I hate to tell you how long we've been doing this.
I know.
Rob,
so
let me ask you about Putin and Ukraine. I am a big supporter of a free Ukraine. I'm also a realist in the Nixon school of realism. I also know we have no idea what's going on because I don't have a security clearance and neither do you. But I sure don't want to condemn anything that's happened yet as a failure or a capitulation to Putin or an abandonment of Zelensky. We just don't know. Why is it that people in our business can't admit we don't know and we won't know what the situation is for 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, we're not going to know. I mean, I think that's the reality, and this is a very fragile negotiation. Let's face it. We saw with the blow up in the Oval Office. We've seen Trump try to bring the parties back together, and Marco Rubio traveling overseas. And so I think we need to pray that there is peace and reconciliation in that part of the world. It's really critical for us to move forward and not continue this war. Many people think back to 2022 as the start of this, but actually you have to go all the way back, I think, to 2014 when Russia started the incursions on Ukraine. And so this is over a decade of war, one of the, a ground war that's taken the lives of so many people. And if Trump could bring it to an end, I really do think he deserves great recognition and maybe even the Nobel Prize for it.
Well, he'll never get the Nobel Prize because it's the Nobel Prize, but we can award it to if it's a good, stable peace with acceptable, and if they get the kids back. We know Putin is a war criminal. We know he's killed civilians. He's targeted civilians. We know he's kidnapped children. He's a horrible human being. That doesn't mean you can't do a deal with him. Nixon sat down with Mao, who's the greatest murderer of the 20th century. Does everyone forget that?
Well, and Hugh, I think this is the key because everything you said about Putin, I agree with. The question is whether or not, if you come to an agreement, will he honor the terms of that deal? Because this has been the problem in the past. And I think that there's skepticism, particularly among the Europeans, about whether that's the case. And I certainly know among the Ukrainians that's the case. And so for those who are in that part of the world, I think that there will need to be, and this is why that mineral rights deal I think was so critical, because it gave the U.S. a stake in Ukraine.
And the fact that President Trump stepped up sanctions in a way that the Biden Regency never did. He's done that, and he's been tougher on Putin in the first 2 months than the Biden Regency was in 4 years. Rob Bluey, great to see you again. Look forward to having you back. Follow him on X at Rob Bluey. Follow the Daily Signal. Go there and consume great content every single day. Thank you, Rob. I'll be on Special Report tonight. Hope you watch that. I know some of you are missing Dennis Prager every day. I want to remind you, he'll be back. He's coming back. But I want you to listen to Pragertopia in the meantime. Here's a little bit of Dennis to tide you over.
Dennis Prager here. The happy make the world better. The unhappy make it worse. It is a moral obligation to act happy even if you don't feel it. We owe it to others to present a happy disposition. If you had to spend the next 6 months on a desert island with somebody, and I said to you one of the people is happy and one is unhappy, who would you vote for?
It's the greatest voice on the radio, and you can get it on demand at Pragertopia. Go and join today. Let me tell you that our friends at the American Legislative Exchange Council, I missed Jonathan yesterday because I was felled by the flu. I'm down and out. But the pink stuff is kicking in. The prednisone is kicking in. And I will kick in next week with Jonathan again on the American Legislative Exchange Council. In the meantime, go to alec.org/Hugh. Sign up and find out the state of the states. All the great stuff that's going on in the states. Look out at Wyoming. They just passed universal school choice. School choice is on its way to Texas, I believe. We got a bunch of great legislation moving through the states. All you have to do is go to alec.org/Hugh, alec.org/Hugh. And one of the reasons I love working with them is they bring to my attention, they do model legislation for all 50 states and they present it. And the reputation of ALEC is such that everyone takes it seriously, studies it, and tries to adopt it. If you're a state legislator or you know a state legislator out there in these great, whether it's nonpartisan, be a Democrat or Republican, just don't be stupid, be smart. Go to alec.org/Hugh and sign up for the State of the States Bulletin, find out what's going there. One more ask of you this hour, which is that you get behind school choice. I've got crossover sponsors like ALEC that crosses over with Job Creators Network, and they both pursue the same agenda sometimes. The one agenda on which I think every single center-right, conservative, even some liberal groups that are concerned about the next generation of the underclass, the people who have to acquire basic literacy and math skills to rise in the land, is education freedom. So our friends at the Job Creators Network have stood up educationfreedomusa.com. educationfreedomusa.com. It's in 17 states now, and it's got to get to 50. The last one to fall will be the blue wall of California, but eventually it will fall or people will leave because the school district here can be the worst in the world or the best in the world, but you don't want to gamble your kid's future on that. My kids had a great public education in California. I don't know if you get to live where I got to live at that time, but I know they're just awful districts because I covered the nightly news in LA for 10 years from 2002 to 1992. We need school choice everywhere, backpack bills. Funding should follow the student. We can't spend this much money and get so little for it. So visit educationfreedomusa.com today and become part of the battle to save the next generation, make them literate, make them productive, make them happy. All right, Job Creators Network is a great sponsor because they do great things like educationfreedomusa.com. That's educationfreedomusa.com. I'll be on Special Report tonight. Hope you will watch that. Not joining me on Special Report tonight, Ben Domenech, a Fox News contributor, but he is, of course, the editor at The Spectator. He has a great podcast, and he's a great, wonderful, regular Friday guest. Ben, I have been sick as a dog for 2 weeks. I know you've got small children. I just want to welcome you to the world of having a plague ship in your house. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, no, so can I recommend something? It's very bougie for you, Hugh. You need to get on the IV drip plan. Okay, this is something that is celebrities use it. They use it to recover from hangovers, and rich people and tech pros and people like that use it. And I will tell you, it has actually made a very real difference in the amount of recovery time that I have from when my kids get sick on essentially clockwork every 2 to 3 months.
Well, I went and saw the grandkids last week, and it was like boarding a plague ship.
I'm telling you, you know it is. It is. But basically what it does is if you order it, it'll cost you, $250, and you get basically.
I'm a boomer, though. That's a very Gen Z thing,
and all sorts of other things pumped into your body. You just do it. Trust me. It's
now,
bougie.
before I
hate
get
it.
serious,
it's rich people stuff. It's not how I grew up, but I do it so that I can bounce back quickly and make it to my daughter's St. Patrick's Day dance tonight.
Okay, good for you. Good for you. Glad that you're going. The second lighthearted topic. You're a football guy, right?
Of course.
All right.
Are you kidding? I asked the president about the tush push.
That's right. That's right.
No.
So we've got two quarterbacks. We got Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders coming out in the draft, and Cam Ward's separated a little bit from Miami, and Shedeur, of course, is Buffalo, and the Browns have the second. We have no quarterbacks. We have Kenny Pickett. God bless Kenny Pickett.
No, Kenny Pickett, replacement level quarterback.
Yeah. So what do you?
Exactly.
Is Shedeur Sanders worth the second pick in the draft?
If I am Cleveland, I would take him.
Yep.
And the reason is that the ceiling on him is insane. Now, the floor is not ideal, meaning that he could very well be a bust. But I just think that you need to have a complete culture change in the quarterback room of Cleveland after everything that you guys have gone through. Not for your own problems. I mean, the decisions that the front office has made has been absolutely terrible. But look, you need a culture change, and I would go for it.
Yeah, this is the easiest thing. They did an internet competition.
I will say this: I had misgivings about picking Jaden Daniels last year. I will not.
Oh, that's
deny
right.
I was unsure. He was so skinny. He was so slight. I was not sure he was going to be able to last in the league. I worried that another second overall pick, Heisman winner, skinny, doesn't necessarily know how to slide, that would end in disaster. Instead, it turned out to be the best season I've experienced as an adult in my life. And so I would just say, you got to go for it.
I've never had a best season as an adult in my life. I've had season tickets at.
You got to go back to Brian Sipe.
At Bernie Kosar. Bernie was okay, but at least we got to a playoff football game at First Energy, or then old Cleveland Brown Stadium Muni. There was an internet competition this week. Hardest franchise to be a fan of. Very, very funny. And it turned out to be the Browns. And that is true. It's the worst franchise. The Commanders were pretty close.
But I will dispute that only because I think there's a certain pride and strength in being a Browns fan that you attract the respect of the AFC North for being, having had such tough experiences and being snake bit in a way.
You overrate us.
Being a franchise like the Jaguars that had a brief moment in the sun under Mark Brunell and has basically been trash ever since.
Well, their owner is crazy down there. All right, let's get to the serious stuff. All right, shall we? I was listening. I've been sick for 2 days, so I've been listening to the book Masters and Commanders. It turns out that at Yalta, FDR was basically Joe Biden in his last year. He was completely slack-jawed, infirm, and the consequences were disastrous.
Did not know what was going on.
Did not know what was going on, and gave away half of Eastern Europe forever to Stalin, who took advantage of him. Churchill was cut out of the room. And it just struck me that the parallel between FDR at Yalta and Joe Biden in the last 2 years is direct. I'm no longer going to call it the Biden it's the Biden Regency. Do you think he knew anything that was going on, Ben?
I really think that we're going to look back and we're going to have, I think, books that come out over the next couple of years from some good journalists who are going to dig into this. And I do not include Jake Tapper in that, who will basically outline the fact that I don't think that this was a functional presidency for the last year and a half. And that is deeply disturbing. We cannot, you can't have someone who's making the kind of decisions at that highest level that Joe Biden was making, without confidence in his competence. And unfortunately, we can't have any of that. And I'll tell you one other thing, whatever you think of the, decisions that this Trump administration has been making, they've been making so many of them very quickly. I don't think that there's any question that this is a president who knows everything that's going on around him in terms of, paying attention to it, being very quick on the draw, seeing things happen and responding to them quickly. I know that you probably saw this naming or potential naming of Daniel Davis to the DNI.
Right. Executed, done. Yep. Over with.
That to me is a complete example of this, where something like that starts to be broached. I don't think that it was actually ever
vetted,
confirmed, vetted, et cetera. It flares up, and I think almost immediately the White House responds and says, wait a minute, this isn't what we're doing. We're not naming somebody like this to this role. And before the day is over, at 3:30, they come out and say, no, he is not getting in. And that's the difference. It's basically a situation where you have somebody who from the top down is aware of what's going on, is making decisions that say, no, wait a minute, who approved this? What are we doing? No, we're not doing that.
That brings me to the Hamas deal. Mr. Witkoff is apparently a very smart man and very close to the president. He has arranged some kind of a deal. I think he's mad at Hamas now because Hamas has gone back on the deal. And we're going to get Idan Alexander, an American citizen, out of hostage tomorrow, and that's good. But Hamas has changed the terms of the deal. And
yes.
Are they just stupid? Are they so stupid as to think they're going to drive a wedge between the United States and Israel?
I think they really are. I mean, wait, can I back up a step here?
Sure.
There's something going on here that we need to address. And you and I and others are paying attention to it closely enough to see what's going on, which is that the Iranian regime, which does not have the power to actually push back against America because they don't have the resources to do it as such, they are doing some things that are clearly meant to influence the American conversation, to fund certain influencers, to play a role in the conversation in America in a way that is designed to create a wedge between us and Israel that I think is easily detectable if you're paying any attention to what's going on there, to who's showing up in these places, to who's doing interviews with these people. It's very disturbing to me because I don't.
Well, let me name a name. Well, Joe Rogan does not know what he's doing. He's a very good interviewer. He doesn't know anything.
Hugh, I was down in Austin at the Comedy Mothership. I've had brief interactions with Joe over the years. He doesn't know when he's being played.
That's it.
Which is it. In other words, his instincts, I think, are actually quite good. It's more that he does not know when someone is walking into the conversation with him with an agenda that is inauthentic, that is actually being funded and pushed and intentionally positioned. And that's what America's enemies are doing right now because they understand the same thing that we do, which is that these entities, these outside, podcasts and platforms and all these other things, they're far more influential than getting someone on CNN.
Yes.
Before, that's what they were trying to do.
Our friend Matt Continetti said this week on the Commentary podcast, the 18 to 30-year-old male demographic, they don't know anything and they don't trust anyone. But they like Rogan, so they listen to Joe Rogan. Good for him. Glad that he's got a platform. He's a good interviewer. But if you bring on malign people with an agenda to drive away.
I would only disagree with Matt to the sense that he says they don't know anything. I think that they actually are a little smarter than that. But I will say that they do not know the way that they are being manipulated, which is something that you and I are much more aware of because we're used to clocking these things, and things that seem like ops, things that seem like influence, operations are very much stuff that, perks us up and makes us pay attention because we're like, okay, this is something where they're trying to influence us.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that the under 30 set does not know.
They may not even believe in espionage, but I got to go to the break. We'll come back. They may not even believe in influence operations. They may not know that they're long-standing. They've been used since the beginning of time, since that's what the Trojan horse comes from. Ben, a little bit of bio for the benefit of the audience and you. I walked into the Department of Justice in 1984 after a background check, was given SCI, sensitive compartmented information clearances to do the domestic counterterrorism warrants for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Sat down, and in 24 hours, my world was rocked. I had no idea how many bad people were in the United States trying to get us killed. They were mostly Soviets then East Germans, some Czechs. There are a lot of Cubans, not many Palestinian activists, not much Chi-Com activity. They didn't have the reach. And there were no Iranians because the revolution hadn't really gotten its wings going yet. They hadn't figured it out. I haven't had it clearance since 1989, so I have no way of knowing now. But I'll bet you the Chi-Coms and the Iranians combined dwarf the Soviet complex of the late 80s. I just do.
I would 100% believe that, and obviously just moving around D.C. and being aware of the people who are influenced along those lines on a very interstitial level. I would just say this is the thing that people underrate about this particular moment. America's enemies understand the way that influence works within the American sphere more than legacy media does. Meaning that in the past, we had a situation where, all right, how are you trying to influence things? You're trying to get someone who's a columnist at the Washington Post or the New York Times. You're trying to get somebody who's a reporter within the White House who's influenced by you or has some kind of compromising, effect. Now we have a situation where these people are trying to populate some of the biggest podcasts in the country. They're working diligently to track the things that people are saying online, to push certain conversations, to elevate certain phrases, words, frames of the way that things are going on, and that is being accepted, rejected, or in terms of some of these people, unfortunately, pushed in ways that is very apparent, I think, for people like you and like me who have paid attention to this stuff over the years, but is not apparent to the average consumer. And so when you see something that's coming along and you say, this is something that seems a little odd. Why is this person pushing this narrative? Why is this person interviewing this individual overseas? You start to ask questions, and when you start to ask those questions, it's almost always a preface to there's something else that's going on here. And unfortunately, I think for the American consumer, they haven't learned yet to analyze that as such.
And the anti-American trio is the Chi-Coms, the Russians, and the Iranians. And they all run ops. And they're all pretty damn good at it. 30 seconds.
Well, and I would just add the North Koreans to that, but they're not very good at it.
They're not very good.
So you don't have to worry about them as much. They're a little more blatant. They don't get subtlety.
But the Chi-Coms are really good at it, and the Iranians
really good at it. They're really good at it. And I think that one of the things that we have to watch out for here, Hugh, is the real aim of the Iranians is to create a split between the American right of center, dominant political wing at the moment, and the people and the leadership of Israel.
Ben, we're cooking with gas during the break here, so I want to go back and just give you the floor because this is so important for people to understand. The attempt to drive a wedge between Israel and the United States is funded by Iran. They are trying, and Israel is our greatest strategic ally, and I'm saying they're better than England and France. They're all three nuclear powers, but Israel's more reliable, more innovative, more powerful, more willing to use their power. They're not crippled culturally. And we are being told that we have to worry about the First Amendment rights of Mohammed Khalil, and we don't. That's been settled law since 1952. It's up to the Secretary of State to throw people out. And we're being told...
By the way, I assume you probably played this already, but I felt like the Marco Rubio explanation on that was one of the most eloquent things that I've heard in recent months. And, my colleague, at formerly at the Manhattan Institute, now he's still there, but I was there as well. Ilya Shapiro has who is himself an immigrant. Has his own argument about this that I encourage people to read on his Substack because he says this is not a First Amendment issue at all.
No, it's not. It's a slam dunk. 8 UFC 1227. Yes. It's just a slam dunk. But now here's the question: what do we do about this? There's old new media like talk radio and Fox News. There's new media, but there are the podcast world, and God bless them all if they know what they're doing. But if you asked any of our big podcasters who Theodore Herzl is, or if you asked them about the Balfour Declaration or anything having to do with the last 100 years, do you think they'd have a clue?
Look, we have to have a little bit of forgiveness here. These people are new to this stuff. You know how it works, Hugh. When you discover something for the first time, sometimes you settle upon it as if it's something new to the whole world. When in reality, it's something that, for those of us who've paid attention to history, we've known for a very long time. And that's something that I think is a classic Achilles heel of these podcast approaches. But this is the thing that you just mentioned that I think is so important for people to understand. The Iranian regime is not so powerful that they can do this without having kind of a guerrilla warfare attitude toward influencing American opinion. And so what are they doing? They are pushing people, and they are promoting people, and they are creating bot networks to promote the arguments of people who are aimed at splitting America from Israel, not just the government, not just Netanyahu, but just the concept of Israel as being something that needs to be defended. And this administration, to its credit, from my perspective, has taken a very strong line on the opponents of Israel and on those who wish to foment criminal activity. By the way, not just this is not about speech. This is not just about endorsing things. You can endorse all sorts of things. You can endorse Nazis. You can endorse Hamas. You can say all sorts of things in promotion of the terrorist cartels that we face. But when you actually take activity and you participate in criminal action on campuses, you do not have a right to be here.
No, and I began the weekend podcast by talking about priorities, Ben. Our biggest enemy is China, but our second biggest enemy is the Iranian-China alliance, and I don't know how we get.
And we can't view that as not being an axis. I mean,
it is an axis.
It's obviously this is connected. It's not something that we can deny. And look, the point is just this, Hugh. I am not someone who favors war. I'm not someone who wants to go to war with China at all. It would be devastating. It would be terrible for the world. What we need to be doing is seeing this in a clear-eyed view and balancing against them, using deterrence, using all the different investments that we need to make in terms of militarily, in terms of our backing of Taiwan, et cetera.
But we
have to make those decisions now. We can't wait, because it's not going to be something that in the future we're going to be able to do and spin up in a very quick way. It's something that we have to be working on now.
I agree. Do you think we can get people to put down their hatred of Donald Trump long enough to realize it's not about Trump? We had TDS. Then we had a lot of people recover from TDS and begin to understand.
I don't know, Hugh. I mean, we saw this whole thing play out this week with Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
He promises, his progressive left friends that he's going to be fighting to shut down the government, which would have, of course, unleashed. I would have loved it.
Elon would have gone crazy
on Tuesday. It would have unleashed Doge to do whatever they wanted to do, which from my perspective would have been, hey, if you're an employee on furlough, just stay home.
Stay home forever. Yep.
But unfortunately, I think that there's a lot of work to be done there. And I'm not sure that the Republicans who are currently in Washington, with a few exceptions, but you know them, and so do I, have the capacity to think through this in the sense that we need to be acting right now to do the kind of deterrence and strength-building exercises with our military to prevent a future war.
Now, Ben, your age, I want to close with it. I think the three most important Republicans for the next 30 years are J.D. Vance, Tom Cotton, and Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin is third in that category, but he could rise. And maybe Doug Burgum and Marco Rubio in that category as well. Can any of them stop the bleeding of intellectual seriousness from the party? Because there's a bleed underway.
There is definitely a bleed underway, and one thing that I will say is, I mean, look, you and I have talked about how we've been impressed with J.D. Vance and how much he's found his message, found his groove. I think that he needs to be recruiting. I think he needs to be out there recruiting people to come into the party, to come in to run for some of these seats, to be contenders in the midterms, and to bring a seriousness and an understanding of the world as it is. To policy, because we need a lot more. We can't. I mean, Elon's not rolling out a cloning machine tomorrow, as far as I know.
But will we find a Buckley moment? Buckley had to drive out the Birchers. Somebody's got to stand up and drive out the anti-Israel people. And I mean drive them out into the wilderness. They can't be in the Republican Party.
I believe I'm completely with you on that, Hugh, but I think it's even more than that. I think they have to drive them out by making the case to the same audience that exists for these podcasts and for all these things out there, that basically says, no, this is why they're wrong. And this is why I understand why, the arguments that you have accepted, the arguments you have heard, this is why you may be open to them, but this is why they're wrong. They're fundamentally wrong, and they're wrong for the future of the country that we want, the country that we love.
Well said. We'll leave it there. Ben, thanks for a half hour. Enjoy the St. Patrick's Day dance. I hope you have a nice green suit and a green hat and all that good stuff.
I have a green sweater. We'll see how much food ends up on it, because that's the way that you assess it with a 4 and a 2-year-old.
Enjoy, my friend. Enjoy. Thank you so much. Ben Domenech, editor-at-large at The Spectator. Follow him on X at @BDomenech. Follow me, will you, over to my website where we are doing our Lenten campaign for Food for the Poor. Feed Their Future. The banner's at the top of HughHewitt.com. All you have to do is go there, click on it. $100 feeds a kid in El Salvador for a year. And Food for the Poor has been doing this for almost 50 years. Begun by a bunch of Catholic priests, and they got all the evangelical pastors, and they went out to anyone who's doing good. And they put together feeding stations for kids who are in school. And they've focused everything on this because El Salvador has actually returned security to the streets. Kids are going back to school. The cartels have been taken on head on. They're all in jail. And now we just need to get resources. Feed Their Future banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Please be generous. The reason I do the Highly Concentrated Hugh podcast is people consume media in a lot of different ways. And sometimes they can listen to the radio program. Sometimes they can watch Salem News Channel. Sometimes they just subscribe to my YouTube channel and catch an interview. But if they want the highly concentrated program, they download the podcast. And I apologize for my voice. I've been sick for 2 weeks, but I came in today because there was so much news happening, and I wanted especially to reflect a little bit on the fact that if you lie around for 2 days in bed, all you do is listen to books and be sick. And the book I listened to, Masters and Commanders by Andrew Roberts, I listened twice to the concluding chapters on Yalta, when a weak and dying FDR got taken to the cleaners by Stalin, and his staff, which included Alger Hiss, a communist spy, kept Churchill away from him, so the greatest statesman of the 20th century could not save maybe the greatest president of the 20th century from his infirmity, his frailty. He was sick, he was dying, and he died not long thereafter and got taken to the cleaners. And the 4 years of the Biden presidency, and it's really the Biden regency. We don't know who was running anything. And as I've talked about, well, you'll hear me talk about with Ben Domenech, we really can't even consider, we don't know what happened there. He just was not fully in command. We saw it in the debate. So we don't really know what was happening. But he's not an evil man. He was just a frail and infirm man who ought not to have been in the Oval Office. He's a jerk. He had emotional control issues. He's been wrong forever. Not an evil man. I mean, there are different categories of evil. There's like Charlie Manson evil, where you're evil on an individual level and you kill people. And there's the evil of people who traffic in children for child prostitution. And they're the evil of people who wreak random violence on school children. There are lots of kinds of evil. But at the top of the evil food chain is the Chinese Communist Party led by Xi Jinping, because they're the most powerful evil actor in the world. And they're allies, and those allies are Iran and Russia, and North Korea, but North Korea is just not very good at what they do, and we got them boxed in. And we're still more powerful than that alliance, because we have a strategic ally in Israel, and we have somewhat strategic allies in NATO. NATO ain't what it once was, because the United Kingdom is flat on its back stupid, and France is flat on its back stupid, and Germany is just getting off of being flat on its back stupid. On the other hand, we got in Poland and Finland and Sweden, and they're pretty serious people, and they're pretty serious about Putin. What I want you to understand is you got to get a clue. There's a worst, and a least worst. And you can't go around spending all your time on the least worst instead of worrying about the worst. Some of you people, and you're friends of mine, you do not want to give Donald Trump a chance to prove you wrong. Every time his name comes up, I got to hear all your priors about how much you don't like him and how he's screwing up tariffs and how he's unstable and doing. No, he's not. He actually has a plan, and the plan is working. The plan is to give Putin enough rope to see if he will turn down a decent ceasefire that preserves Ukraine and preserves the freedom of Ukraine and maybe gets the kids back. And if he doesn't, then we load him up with weaponry and intel. And he had to work Zelensky into understanding that Zelensky is not the master of his own ship. The West is the master of his ship, and we want him to survive. We want that ship to sail. We don't like Putin. Putin is an evil, corrupt, terrible war criminal. We don't like Xi. He's a genocidal maniac who put the Uyghurs behind bars, who spies on us at all times. We really don't like Iran, which killed hundreds of American soldiers over the course of the long war, and would do it again tomorrow and would destroy the little Satan and the big Satan tomorrow if they could. Those are our three biggest evils. Now, the cartels are up there too, but they're just selling product. They're just killing people because it makes them money. They're not in the business of killing Americans just to kill Americans. That's not the case about Xi and Putin and especially Khamenei. All right, so we got a very clear read. If you go back to my YouTube feed and listen to the conversation I had with Haviv Reddick Gur about the two alliances in the Middle East. One of those alliances are the conservative Sunni states like the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, Israel and us, and some others like the Druze, like the Maronites, like the Kurds. And then there are the Shia and the Sunni fundamentalists like Hamas. And I don't know where Turkey is on this. I don't have any clearances. I don't know whether or not they're with us or against us. But all I'm here is get your head on right and understand the news is not, the world doesn't break down on your opinion on Donald Trump. Focus on the real threat to America, which are the Chicoms, the Iranians, and the Russians. And then understand you don't know what's going on because you haven't got a clearance. So stop. I mean, the TDS is making me crazy on the right. And the anti-Semitism is it's the ancient evil back in full flower. And we just have to crush it. It's raining hard in Southern California right now. This is by Harry Chapin. Totally stumped Adam. It's hard to stump Adam. But Harry Chapin died in 1981, so I guess we're going to give him a pass on that. Cat's Cradle and Taxi might be his only two songs. Dwayne, am I right about that? Cat's Cradle and Taxi? That's it for Harry Chapin?
No, he recorded a whole bunch of songs. He was a singer-songwriter. He wrote more than two.
Oh, I know, but I mean, they're two big hits, or Taxi.
Those are his two big hits.
And Cat's Cradle, yeah. So I just bring that up for no reason other than the fact it's pouring. Let me tell you what else is pouring. Markets. Market Update is brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. And today I woke up and I subscribe to two newspapers, the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times. And the first headline of the Financial Times is Gold hits 3,000 for first time on global growth fears. So I sent a note off to Nick Grovich, who runs American Federal Coin and Bullion, a sponsor of our show, and he sponsors the Market Update every day, which I do either at or near the close of the market. You can call Nick and his team at 1-800-221-7694, 1-800-221-7694, if you want to buy or you want to sell gold. And I said, what's going on? I've never seen $3,000 an ounce. And Nick sent me back a very detailed email. Nick thinks there's going to be resistance around 3,000 and then a big breakout. Same thing happened at 2,000. It's not particularly rational. It's just a number. But that's what happened when gold ran up against 2,000, whenever that was. And it stuck around 2,000 for a while, and then it burst through, and it began its march to 3,000. So he expects it's going to swim around 3,000. Now, the great thing about Nick is he makes money whether he buys gold from you or you sell gold to him, because he's not going to sell you gold for what the market price is. He's going to put a commission on it. And he's not going to buy your gold for what the market price is. He's going to deduct a commission from it. Here's why I love American Federal. It's all just transparent. If you want to talk collectibles with them, by all means. They got that division. If you're one of those people, I'm not. I've just been buying a little bit of gold for a long time every year in January, and did it from Nick in January. And there's no muss, there's no fuss. It's here's how much I want, here's how much I'll send you, how much do I get? He sends it to me, it goes in the safety deposit box, and I hope my grandchildren's grandchildren use it. It's not what I consider to be a liquid investment, though. you could liquidate it if you needed to, and a lot of people have always kept gold around for that reason. Some people use it for jewelry. Some people love to own it. Some people are gold bugs. That's not me. I'm a diversified, boring guy. Mutual funds, real estate, and gold. That's it. Because I'm not smarter than Wall Street, and neither are you. But I do believe in diversification, doing the same, dollar cost, quarterly, whatever, buy the same amount, put the same amount into the same mutual fund every month for over a long period of time. And when you're old, you have some money. That's all. It's not really extravagant. You're not going to be Peter Thiel. You're not going to be Elon Musk, but you're also not going to be relying on a Social Security check that ain't going to clear because we're spending all the money. But I asked Nick, and he said that's what he told me. He expects that pickup on both the call and the sell side is going to happen. And he's indifferent. He makes money either way. And I'm indifferent because he's reliable either way. That's why I like him. You can trust him. 1-800-221-7694 or visit AmericanFederal.com. If he's right, and there's a gold boom coming after it does the breakout at 3,000, you'll be glad you did. Now, what happened on the market today? I have not covered the doom and gloom stuff because markets are stupid and they overreact. So today the Dow closed up 1.65%, the S&P closed up 2.13%, and the NASDAQ closed up 2.61%. So you know who lost this week? The people who panicked after 3 days of anti-Trump headlines telling you tariffs were going to destroy the economy. And they sold all their NASDAQ stocks. And now they're screwed. Don't do that. Markets go up and markets go down. Bet on the free market, which is what Trump is bringing back. Now I want to go get a grab from J.D. Vance up in Michigan. Cut number 2.
That what we're really after here. And you see so many people attacking the president's economic programs and attacking the progress that we've made over the past 7 weeks. You hear people saying, well, how dare Donald Trump impose tariffs on foreign countries that have been taking advantage of us for 40 years? And the answer is that unless you're willing to use American power to fight back against what those countries have been doing for a generation, you are never going to rebuild American manufacturing, and you're never going to support the American worker.
God bless Vice President Vance. He's absolutely right. Now, it's especially important vis-a-vis China and Iran and Russia that we reshore our critical industries, and we need manufacturing here in a big way. Cut number 5.
If we do not protect our nation's manufacturers, we lose a fundamental part of who we are as a people. Making things, building things, working with our hands is America's heritage, and that heritage is alive and well in this facility.
That's the grandson of two steelworkers. All right, so I am not. I'm the grandson of a fireman and a farmer. And I am not a steelworker kid. But I grew up in a steel town, and I know about steelworkers. And there's a great advantage to having grown up in a steelworkers town is that you know real people who work with their hands and did hard jobs. And God bless them all. And I'm so glad the Vice President's taken that message out there. Let me tell you about our Food for the Poor effort. Please head over to Feed the Future. The banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Don't forget it. Feed the Future. $100 takes care of a child in El Salvador for a year. It's Lent. Do that. It's pouring in Southern California. I don't know if it's pouring in Tarzana, but Tarzana Joe is here to pour some poems on us. Hello, Joe.
Hello. It was pouring on the golf course today, but I managed 18 holes this morning.
What'd you shoot?
Wife. 90.
No, you shot your age. No, I'm joking. Just joking.
Oh, well, Hugh, in a week of volatility and TROs, I've been doing some thinking. Did we think it would be easy? Did we think it would be nice? Did we think we'd take a stand and that there wouldn't be a price? Is it easier to grapple with the massive debt that's owed or to take the nation's can and kick it further down the road? Did we think they would resign or just politely go away? Didn't we know each time we stumbled they'd be out there making hay? The problems in our lives confirm there are no easy fixes. Food for thought shouldn't be consumed from ultra-processed mixes. Election day was crucial, as was election night, but that was not the end, just the beginning of the fight. Is your spirit made of straw, or is your spirit made of sticks? With the way the wind is blowing, better find a house of bricks. Did we think it would be pleasant? Did we think it would be fun? There are miles filled with pain each time a marathon is run. But if I ever ran one, I bet it would be stunning. And the contest that we're in is sure a race that's worth the running. That's when the going gets tough. The Tough Shoot 90 by Tarzana Joe.
I love that poem, which will be at tarzanajoe.com, as well as a button if for all your poetry needs. Write Joe at tarzanajoe@reagan.com. And his rates are reasonable, poems for any reason, any price. But tarzanajoe.com is where you'll find that poem. Joe, you used the word nice, so I thought you were lining up some leap to ice, because are the Stanley Cup still on? Is there hockey in America?
We're about 19 games from the end of the regular season.
And are you still a Rangers fan?
My team's struggling just a bit.
I have no idea. Are they horrible?
No, but they're struggling just a bit.
Are they as bad as the Browns?
They're behind Columbus. Okay.
Oh, the Blue Jackets I know I'm supposed to care about, but I just don't care about hockey. I just don't. And it's one of the things I don't care about. But you're there for a hockey poem. For anyone who needs a hockey poem or retirement poem, could you knock off a St. Patrick's Day poem in 48 hours if anyone needs one?
If the road rises up to greet you, yes.
No, that doesn't count. All your poetry needs, tarzanajoe@reagan.com, or just go and read all of his great work and get his great books at tarzanajoe.com.